Welcome everybody to Crypto Rosetta. My name is Savage. Today we're going to be having a look at VECHAIN. This is going to be a lower time frame video. We do have our higher time frame video up above, so check that out if you haven't already. Let's get into the charts and see what's going on. Okay, before we jump into the lower time frame counter, we're going to talk about the two ways that we're still currently looking at this. So within the bigger picture here, what we were looking for is the potential that we could still be looking for a flat correction here, where we could be looking for a 5-wave move to actually develop to the upside. Now, the common area that we'd be looking for here for this to actually develop into would actually be this 1.618 to this 1236. But if we are looking at this as a wave 1, this is a wave 2, and then potentially looking for extension to the upside, it is possible that we could surpass this target area here and look for rather the interaction with the top of this A wave, or alternatively this higher figure here of this 04699. Now this is not a common target for a C wave, but it is still one nonetheless. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this idea for as long as we continue to hold this 1318 area. We could still potentially look for this idea of having a 5-wave structure developing to the upside, targeting the top of this A wave. Now, if we are looking at this in our more bearish idea here, what we were saying is that we could actually have a triangle over here, and we could be looking for this as a potential A, B, and a C. Now, the problem that I have here is that we can potentially count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into this high. And because we can count this as 5 waves, it is possible then that potentially this B wave could still be in play, where we still just see this move actually develop as A, B, and C, where we could potentially look to target up this area here of this 0.786 higher up in this target zone. Now, if we also add this 854 to this target, this would actually be looking for this 2401, which would align quite nicely with coming back into the central channel line here. So going to be keeping an eye on this if we do see a reversal here, where we push back to the upside, where we get this as A, B, and C. Potentially we could look for this reaction here in the B wave, and then still look to push back down in a C wave at a later point. So this is going to be very important here to see how we actually develop. As long as we hold this low though, we can't ignore the fact that we do have the potential to have a 5-wave move here. Now, if we're looking at this as a potential break to the upside here, what I would be looking for in the first leg here is that this makes our A wave. We're looking for a 3-wave move to the downside. Most common target area here is this 618 to this 786. I have got the 0.854 in here as well as a potential target, just because this would align quite nicely with sweeping these lows and also moving back into the central channel here towards the zone of this 1387. So I'm going to be watching that if we do continue to push down here. Now, within this, what we'd be saying is that we're looking for 3 waves down, and then we want to see a 5-wave structure developing to the upside. Now, if we're looking at this move to the downside, what we can say here is we could look at this in 2 ways. So we could argue that this is an A, a B, and a C, in which case what we could be looking for is a move to complete here somewhere between this 121, which we've already hit, and this 1382. Now, if we do look to push down deeper here towards this 1236 to this 1382 level, this would align quite nicely with actually seeing an additional move down here. Now, the problem with this is that internally, it's hard to say that this move is completed here. It is possible if we say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and we've had an extension in the 5th wave. So we're going to be monitoring that. But until we actually break back above these highs, we need to be careful of the idea that we could still see continuation to the downside in that C wave. So we're going to go over that bearish count in a second. But what I'm looking for here is, if we start to form impulsive structure to the upside in a 5-wave move, this could be the first indication that we are going to get a move up. Now, if we do get 3 waves back down, which holds this low, then potentially what we could see is this develops into a bigger 5-wave move, looking for either this 1-to-1 level here, or if we do form something like this where we get a couple of 1s and 2s down here, this could align with actually seeing a bigger break to the upside. Now, if we are looking at this, like I said, we need to hold this level. Invalidation is this 1318, and we need to see price looking to turn around from this area. Now, we could also argue that within this structure here, we are looking at a bigger breakdown. Now, this would be aligning more with the idea here that within this structure, this is actually our B wave high here, even though at the moment I am treating it as a 5-wave move. If we fail to start breaking back above these highs, we need to be very careful, because there is still potential more locally here that we could be extending. So if we come in here, now the way I'm looking at this is that potentially we could have this as 1, 2, this is another 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 here. Now, in this case, what we'd be saying is that in validation of this idea where this is 1, 2, looking for this as a 3rd, and then looking for an additional 4th and a 5th, would be this 1725. As long as we remain below this level, we need to be very careful that our common rejection area for a wave 4 is this 1667 to this 1563. So as long as we remain below this 50%, the likelihood is that we're going to see continuation down. Now, the thing within this count is this is quite tricky, because it would mean that there's a series of 1s and 2s in the upper end of this, which would mean that from further on here, what we'd get is we'd get this blue wave 5 come into play. Then we'd get a 3 wave move to the upside, not breaking this previous 4th wave. Then we'd see a wave 5. Then we'd see another wave 4. Then we'd see another wave 5. And then we'd see one last wave 4 and another wave 5. So this would actually be looking for you know, some deeper extension here. Now, if we're going to see some of these deeper targets come in here, what I will be looking out for is the relationship to this first move down. So the 2.618 is here at this 0.1320, and then if we do look to push past that zone, we have this 1.119 area. So if we do start to see this bigger extension here, I will be keeping an eye on these two lower fib levels as potential zones where we could see a wave 3 end or a wave 5 end. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that if we do see this continue to break to the downside. For as long as we actually stay in this 4th wave area, it is still possible to see this continuation down. So I am being mindful that, you know, if we do continue to hold this zone as resistance, we could start to see this break to the downside. And once we cross this low here of this 1318, that bullish count is basically starts to fall apart, and it would make much more sense that we are looking for this idea of this C wave, which could potentially look to push us down towards this zone of this 00962. That would be our 1-to-1. We do have other levels here towards the 786 and this 854 here, which I'll be keeping an eye on as well. And the minimum requirement would be looking for is this 0.618, which would be bringing us back into this A wave low. So we'll keep an eye on that. But if this is going to be a C wave currently, where this is 1 2 1 2 1 2, and then we're starting to break down from there, the likelihood is that this 0.618 is not going to be enough to fit all of those waves in. But we'll have to keep an eye on it as the structure progresses, if that is actually the case and what we are following here. Now, more locally here, we also need to be a little bit careful that we don't have further extension within this count, where what we could also argue is that this wave 3 over here is not completed, where we could potentially count this as another 1-2 and another 1-2. Now, the way that we're counting this like this, ideally I'd like this wave 2 to have been bigger than the next one. So this is making it less likely already, but technically speaking, as long as we hold below 1694, we could still look for something along these lines. Now, what this would do is this would actually allow us to push up a little bit higher here than that typical 4th wave area before looking for that push to the downside. We have already come up into this golden pocket, and we have started to move away. If we see price starting to reject from this level and we start to break down, this could align with the idea of starting to see this wave 3 come into play here. But what we'd be expecting is that if we have this wave 3 in play, where we're looking for this lower target area here of this 0.1290 as a 1.618 off of our current area, what we would then be looking for would be good impulsive structure down while volume is actually increasing. So that'll be a good indication that this is actually a wave 3 here, and this volume over here should be higher than the previous wave volumes that we have over here. So that'll be a good indication that we are in that wave 3. If we do see something like this, what we then get is a 3rd, 4th, and a 5th. Then we get an additional 4th and a 5th, which could look to push us down towards this 1.214 to this 1.160. Now, the key thing within this idea then would be that if we do get an extension like this within this move, if this is a series of 1s and 2s up here, we'd still have an additional 4th and a 5th, another 4th and a 5th, another 4th and a 5th. So effectively 3 4ths and 5ths still to come into play from further back here. So this is why we need to be a little bit careful here. It is possible that you could try and argue something like this 1 2 3 4 and 5 as a diagonal. It would have to be expanding though, which is not as common. So we'll have to see how the waves progress from here. But effectively, at the moment, as long as we continue to fail to push above those 4th wave areas and this zone of this 1645, we need to just be very careful that, you know, this can still look to extend to the downside. Now we're going to come in here and we're going to talk about what we would be looking for if this is a completed move. Now, if we're looking at this as a potentially completed move, like we said, you know, we'd want to see an impulse developing to the upside. Now, there's not enough evidence here, and the move is looking very corrective currently, so it is not looking likely, but I am still keeping an eye on it just because of where we've come into those typical zones. Now, given the current structure, there's only really one way we could potentially argue this is taking place, and that would be saying that we actually have this as a wave 1 into this high, where we say that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 into this high. Now, if that's the case, this would effectively then have to be either an A wave or a wave 2. If this is a wave 2, this could be completed, and what we'd be looking for confirmation would be a move up towards this 1808. As long as we hold this zone of this 1563, we could potentially see this yellow wave count play out to the upside, where we get this 5-wave structure where this is 1, this is 2. We look for 3, 4, and 5, which could look to push us up towards the 1680 level to this 1667. Like I said, invalidation is this 1563. If, however, this is just rather a corrective move here, where we still got a move to the downside to play out, where we could look to come back down into this 382 to the 786 level, 1504 is going to really be that line in the sand that we don't really want to see price move beyond, because typically speaking, our wave 2 is going to look for this 50% to the 786 level. It very rarely looks to cross the 786 and move into that 854, but it can do so. So really, as long as this invalidation holds at this 1475, we do have potential to see this continuation up, but we don't have enough evidence that this is playing out. If we start to see price pushing up past this 1659, then potentially we could look for this as an option. Now, within the white wave count here, we can see that this would be very far away from our target up here. So there have to be one of two things that plays out here. If we're going to look to extend, we'd have to potentially see this as 1, 2, get something like another 1 and a 2 here, maybe even one more 1, 2 here, and then start to see this playing to the upside, looking for this 1618. So that would be what we'd be looking for that bullish case. If we want to look at this lower time frame stuff and say this is just a corrective move, what we can also argue here is that we could argue this is just A, B, and C into this for a W. Now, if this is a W, what we could see is that this is an X wave, and we could just get A, B, and C to the upside. Now, the one-to-one of this as an A, B, and a C would be actually here at the 1626. If we do just see 5 waves to the upside here, when we move up to this 1626, we need to be careful of the idea of a breakdown from that point. But given the current structure here, the Y wave minimum requirements actually up here at this 0.618 at this 1653. So if we do see a move up here, it would be, I would like to see this get hit. So if we do get some extension within this and we start to see this push up into these zones, this could align with this Y wave coming into play, where this is just W, X, and Y, and then we still look to break down from that point. However, if we start to push up past this 1618 level that we talked about within that bullish count, which would be sitting here at the 1659, this would then align more with the fact that this is turning into a 5-wave structure. Now, once again, you know, until we hit that higher impulsive target, this could still just become A, B, and C to the upside. So we need to just be aware of that. At the moment, there isn't really that much evidence saying that we could be looking to break to the upside, but we are responding well off this low. Now, what I want to see is if we continue to build this structure. If we fail to build this idea of this ABC to the upside, I will be watching this lower support zone here, potentially towards this 50% to the 786 zone. But if we start to lose that, the likelihood then becomes that we are already looking for that possibility of breaking down in this blue fifth wave, where we could see this 1443 to this 1392 breaking down if this is the fifth wave, or in the extension, the idea would be that we could be looking for this 1290 to confirm this idea of an extension within the structure here. So it's going to be very important here until we start to break above these highs, potentially this one here of this 1697 and this 1887 up higher. We need to be very careful that this move can still look to just extend out and break down directly. Having a look at the daily CPR lines here, what we can see is that these are pretty much unchanged here. So this is typical when we start to see ranging price structure. So what this can mean is that we could just see price looking to continue to range for the rest of today within this level, and then look for the potential of either break to the upside or downside as of tomorrow. Now, if we are looking at this in the alternate way, which this can also mean the possibility of a breakout or breakdown, what we could see is price could get gravitated towards this low point of this 1564. If we are looking for that potential of a breakdown, other targets to the downside would be 1528. We have this 1502, 1466 as potential downside targets. If we do look to the upside here and we manage to get back above these CPR lines, potential targets to the upside would be the 1626, 1651, 1687, and this area here of the 1713. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on these higher zones. If this is looking to be that bigger, like I said, WXY, where we're looking for another ABC pattern to the upside, this would align with that idea. Now we're going to come over here and have a look at the weekly CPR lines. Now, looking at the weekly CPR lines, we've actually met all of our requirements here, but what we could still find here is that we could find resistance at the 1630, 1677, 1743, and these central lines if we move to the upside 18 cents to this 1780. So if we do see price moving up here, I'm going to be keeping an eye on these levels of potential resistance along that way. If we do see a break to the upside, other targets to the upside for this week would be 1855, 1902, and this 1971 as potential targets. Now coming over here and having a look at the monthly pivots, what we can see is that price has actually come all the way down here to this S2 line already. We had a little bit of an interaction earlier on in the month with this central line, and then we have actually rejected to the downside. Now, if we look to continue to hold this level of this 1587, we could see price get gravitated to this higher S1 line here of this 1725. And then if we do look to push beyond that zone, we could potentially look to interact again with this 1892 to this 1956 area as potential resistance once again above us. If, however, we see this idea of a continuation to the break, a continuation to the downside, we'll be keeping an eye on this 1386 level lower down here, which is aligning with the center of this channel. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. If we do see price looking to break to the downside, this could coincide with that idea of having a retest of that zone. If we do manage to break back above these central lines this month, targets to the upside would be this 2062, 2263, and this 2402 as potential upside targets for this month. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on these levels to see exactly how price is going to interact with these levels, to give us a little bit of an indication as to whether, you know, there's strength within the market or if this is going to continue to sell off. Now, we need to also just remember price can always look to move through these levels. These are just potential pivot zones within the market. Okay, so I'm going to leave the video there. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please smash the like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, turn on those bell notifications so you never miss a video. Leave us some feedback down below, and in the description you will find a link to the Discord. Come check it out. It's free to join. Everyone have a great day. We will see you in the next one. Take care.